Bibliophiles of the internet, I'm Adri, and today I'm here to recommend some more books based on TikToks. This has been like a mini-series on my YouTube channel. I've done it 3 times before, and you can find all of those videos included down below. As I say in every installment, all credit for this concept goes to my wonderful friend Alex from Pucks and Paperbacks, whose original video will also be included down below. If you enjoy creative bookish content like this, then you should definitely go support his videos. This is pretty straightforward stuff. I'm going to show a random TikTok from my FYP and then match it with a book that has a similar tone, energy, or premise. So with that said, let's jump right in.
When I turned 5, my father started teaching me martial arts. He trained me to become an assassin. The guy that attacked us earlier, his name is Tanaka. He's the head of the Yakuza family, but he's also my brother. How do you know the forbidden technique of the crawling tiger? No, Carter, you don't get it. You Americans will never understand what it means to dishonor your family. Oni-san, yamete. Nani o shiteru? Please, sir. I don't want any trouble. All I have left now is my honor. My honor. Okay, so you have a machine gun and you have a samurai sword. I guess I gotta use my jacket then.
Very rarely does a TikTok come across my FYP that is almost perfectly tailored to one specific book, but for this TikTok, I have to recommend Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. It's a really unique blend of satire, contemporary fiction, and speculative fiction. It's set in this quintessential Chinatown where the characters are continuously living out a never-ending television show. The main character, Willis, has always played the bit role of the generic Asian man, but he wants nothing more than to become Kung Fu Guy because that is the biggest role for Asian men currently in existence. So it's basically about what Willis is willing to sacrifice for his dreams as he desperately tries to become the protagonist in his own story and his own life. This story is such an incisive commentary on the phenomenon of Asian-descended peoples always being seen as secondary in their own countries, in their own cultures, in their own families, and in their own lives. And ultimately it speaks to how our ideas of individuality and identity are so deeply tied up in exaggerated, predestined roles created for other people's consumption and entertainment, much like the character in this TikTok. This is such an ambitious and fascinating story that explores how the true tragedy of assimilation is the way it strips entire groups of people of the ability to imagine a future of their own making. It is one of my favorite books of all time, and I definitely recommend it.
I have feelings for you. I have feelings for you.
The feeling was friendship.
The potential this TikTok has is delicious. I know the text of this TikTok says male, but I feel like I can pretty much recommend any queer historical fiction book for this, and before anyone says anything, I know the obvious answer is The Song of Achilles, but I'm just gonna assume that we all know about The Song of Achilles. I did think about The Air You Breathe, Cantoras, The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics, Confessions of the Fox, The Book of Salt, and so many more, but I think I'm gonna go with The Gods of Tango by Carolina de Robertes. If you've been around my channel for a while, you know that I talk about this book all the time, but I still don't think it's read as widely as it deserves, which is why I'm gonna bring it up once again. It's about a trans-mask immigrant named Dante whose family sends him to Argentina to be married, but when he gets there, he learns that his spouse-to-be is actually dead. With no money, no connections, no family, and no possessions to his name besides his grandfather's violin, Dante finds himself in the underground tango scene and decides to become a professional violinist. But he is not presenting as a man at this time, and male musicians are the only ones who are finding success. So he cuts his hair, binds his chest, takes on a new name, and really discovers his true self in the process. Now he must protect the secret of his past life at all costs, or else it could not only jeopardize his career, but also his life. I feel like this book fits this TikTok because part of the story is that Dante is exploring his sexuality along with his gender, and he falls in love with a woman who fully embraces his queerness and his transness. And I feel like if a prolific Argentinian musician like Dante were to ever make it into the history books, historians would most likely not understand or acknowledge him as being queer, much less trans. This is one of those stories that forces history to reckon with the fact that queer and trans people have always existed across the world in every single time period across every single culture, and recreates that history with such beauty and nuance.
Now, in Spanish we have a saying, sana, sana, colita de rana. Si no se cura hoy, se cura mañana. And when you translate that to English, it literally means,
Hail, frog ass!
Latina TikTok is a truly special place, but even though it may not be obvious, I could not recommend any other book for this besides Nocturna by Maya Montaigne. Trust the process, I will get to the explanation, but Nocturna is a Latina-inspired high fantasy series about a prince and a thief whose worlds collide as they both embark on an impossible quest. Finn is a talented face shifter who can change her appearance at will, but when she gets on the wrong side of an angry mobster, she's ordered to steal something from the palace or else he will take her magic. Prince Alfer is grieving the death of his brother and struggling to understand his place as the only remaining heir, and he's so desperate to somehow resurrect his brother that he's willing to dabble in forbidden magic if it means bringing him back. When Finn runs into Alfie mid-heist, the two accidentally unleash a dark and powerful magic that could very well tear their world apart. So why this book for this TikTok? Very simply put, this is the first book I ever read that had the phrase "Sana sana colita de rana" in the book. Like the TikTok implies, it's sort of a nonsensical Spanish phrase that you say to soothe someone, especially like a child who's been hurt or upset. And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm gonna make it all better by saying this magical phrase. And that leads me into what I love so much about this series. It's the first Latina-inspired high fantasy series written by a Latina author that I've ever read, and I love the way it uses Spanish. In this story, not only is Spanish part of the world, but it's an essential component of magical power, and that is such a special use and positioning of the language. There's something so incredible about showcasing Spanish not only as a source of dignity and beauty, but as being something that literally creates magic. And this phrase is actually used as a healing spell in the book, which totally blew my mind and brought me so much joy. And it also speaks to the fluidity of the magic system itself, which is very much not rigid or strict. The words of this phrase only have power because Alfer associates them with the power of healing, and that's what ignites the magic. That is just one small world-building detail of so many that make Nocturna so incredibly special. I am eagerly awaiting the third and I believe final installment in the trilogy, and to say I recommend it is an understatement.
My brother bought a house and we are at his housewarming party, but I bought this sweater and I think I look really good, so...
You know, I relate to this TikTok more than I would like to admit. Anyways, this might be cheating since it doesn't come out until 2022, but I cannot shake the idea that this TikTok pairs perfectly with The Feeling of Falling in Love by Mason Deaver. It's a T4T fake dating rom-com about Neil, who's trans, and just before he's about to fly cross-country for his brother's wedding with one of his best friends / friends with benefits as his date, said friend confesses his love, and Neil is unable to reciprocate. Now they're kind of in the middle of this awkward non-breakup breakup, and both of them still have to go to the wedding, so Neil realizes that he needs to find a new date and fast. With the goal of making his ex, Josh, believe that he's moving on, Neil enlists the help of his unwilling roommate and enemy, Wyatt, to come with him to the wedding and hopefully make things a little less disastrous. And I think we all know how that goes. I know you're thinking, wait, how can you recommend a book you haven't read yet? I have. I actually have read this book, and maybe I'll talk about that later, but I have read it, I loved it, and let me assure you, y'all are not ready for the heat that Mason Deaver's about to bring. But yes, Neil as a character definitely has the same energy as this TikTok. He doesn't have a super great relationship with his family, and especially as like the token trans kid, he's already made out to be the black sheep and the family disappointment. It's one of those situations where he hasn't seen his family in a really long time, and he wants to impress them and show them that he's doing okay for himself, which is really intimidating against the backdrop of this show-stopping wedding, especially when weddings are seen as a symbol of status and success. So here's his brother, super successful, very accomplished, set for life, in love with the girl of his dreams, bringing the family together for this over-the-top week of lavish wedding festivities, and then there's Neil, who's like the moody, reclusive, trans kid who hates everyone. So I feel like Neil showing up with Wyatt and this half-baked plan to impress his family and his ex with his fake relationship is very much the same energy as being obscenely proud of a cute sweatshirt.
I have this issue where I hate everything I've ever said out loud, and yet I will not shut the fuck up.
For this last TikTok, my first instinct was to say In Other Lands, but I actually recommended that book earlier in this series, so I was trying to think of other books that have quote-unquote unlikable or insufferable main characters, which is why I'm going with Meet Cute Diary by Emery Lee. It's another T4T YA romance about a triracial trans boy named Noah who runs a blog known as Meet Cute Diary, where he collects real-life submissions of trans happily ever after stories so that he can share them online and bring some hope to struggling trans folks. The problem is that all the submissions are made up by Noah himself, himself, and now an online troll is threatening to expose both the blog and Noah himself if he doesn't come clean on his own first. Just before Noah is about to give up, he runs into a cute bookseller who happens to be a fan of the blog and who offers to fake date Noah so that they can fabricate proof to clear up any suspicion and keep the blog afloat. I feel like this TikTok is perfect for Noah. In fact, it could very easily be one that he made himself because he definitely says and does a lot of not great things. Just as a person, he's extremely self-obsessed, stubborn, and very dramatic. Everything is about him. If anyone says something he doesn't want to hear, it's a personal attack, and he's extremely reactionary and very rarely, if ever, actually apologizes for his actions. And to his credit, I think it's important to witness him making those mistakes because not only does he grow from them as a person, but he's also learning to confront some very deeply held issues. And for trans people especially, there's already so much expectation that we have to prove ourselves, that we have to prove who we are and why we are in a way that's digestible for cis people, and that can be really exhausting. And sometimes that exhaustion manifests in unhealthy responses. As you know, I'm a huge advocate for stories that just let trans people be messy and deeply imperfect, and while it's also extremely hopeful, this is definitely one of those stories. There's a lot more about it that I really enjoyed. You can watch my last Queer Lit Readathon wrap-up to see all of my thoughts, but I think this book and this disaster boy definitely deserve some more love. So there you have it. Those are 5 more book recs based on TikToks, and there will definitely be more to come. If any of these TikToks remind you of your favorite books, feel free to drop those in the comments down below. But that's everything I had to recommend for today. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, educate yourself, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.